Hi, this is Stan Bush.
Hi, this is Stephanie Calvert.
This is John Payne.
This is Jack Hughes.
Hey everybody, this is Prescott Niles.
Hi, I'm Carrie Stevens.
Hello, I'm Kofi Baker.
And you're listening to Play That Rock and Roll.
This is not a test. This is Play That Rock and Roll. I'm your host, Joe K, and today our guest is the lead singer, guitarist, and songwriter for the band TRIUMPH, Rik Emmett. TRIUMPH was a very successful rock band in the late 70s and early 80s with huge radio hits like Fight the Good Fight, Hold On, Magic Power, and of course the immortal Lay It on the Line. Lay It on the Line is also the title of Rik's new memoirs. Lay It on the Line, a backstage pass to rockstar adventure, conflict, and triumph. This book is a very unique approach to the autobiography. It's not your typical rockstar memoirs, to its credit. Rik shares his stories and experiences, but he also provides valuable insight into songwriting, musicianship, and the music business as a whole. It's a very enjoyable read that gets quite personal at times. So if an autobiography is meant for you to get to know its author, this book succeeds in ways that many others fall short. If you like rock and roll autobiographies, this is absolutely one that you're going to want to check out. In this interview, we discuss his writing process, what other autobiographies he read in preparation for writing his own, and also a very funny story from something that happened at one of his gigs. We also cover two big topics in TRIUMPH's history. First, MTV's impact on the band, and second, their legendary performance on Heavy Metal Day at the 1983 US Festival. And finally, because it's the Halloween season, Rik shares a very interesting and unique recommendation for a song to listen to around this time of year. I'll get right to the point here. This is one of the best interviews we've ever done, so I would like to extend a huge thank you to Rik Emmett for being such a fantastic guest. It was an absolute joy to speak with him, and I think you're really going to enjoy not just this conversation, but the book as well. And I would also like to thank this book's publisher, ECW Press. They've sent guests my way in the past, and every conversation has been excellent. They publish a lot of really good books, so if you're looking for something to read, I would point you to the catalog over at ECW Press. Finally, I'd also like to thank Pantheon Podcasts for including me on their network. It's a real honor to be included alongside some of my absolute favorite podcasts, and Pantheon has been producing some very exciting content this year, so definitely take a look at what's going on over at Pantheon's website. And if you'd like to learn more about Rik, you can check out his website, rikemmett.com, and if you want to learn more about TRIUMPH, you can check out their website at triumphmusic.com. You can also find Rik on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And with that, here's my conversation with the author of the new book, Lay It on the Line, a backstage pass to rockstar adventure, conflict, and triumph, Rik Emmett. Oh, and happy Halloween. Lay it on the line. I, unfortunately, have never had a chance to see you perform in concert, but I do have a story that I wanted to start with that I think you'll enjoy. In Milwaukee, where I live, every summer we have the big festival, Summerfest. And in 2016, I attended. And in the middle of the day on one of the free stages, School of Rock was playing. Are you familiar with School of Rock? It's like a foundation where that teaches like younger kids how to play instruments and sing on stage and kind of develop, young artists.
Sure.
And it's a very cool group. And we went over to watch them play, and it was a bunch of teenagers kind of cycling through a lot of different classic rock songs. And it was nice, but for most of the show, fans were kind of talking amongst themselves, and there's kind of a murmur over as the kids were playing. But near the end of the set, there was a girl, probably about 14, who came to the front of the stage to sing her song. And it was Lay It on the Line. and she was kind of slouched over, didn't seem to have a lot of self-confidence at first, so we weren't really sure what was going to happen. But when it got to, she started singing, and when it got to the big chorus, she started belting with so much power and energy and started stomping around the stage that everybody in the crowd who had been talking this whole time stopped and just were enthralled with how she just totally owned the crowd. And it was like a really memorable moment for me at Summerfest. And I just thought that was really cool because that, for one, it speaks to the power of that song, and the lasting, like you say in the book, evergreen, like it still connects with younger fans.
Yeah, that's a lovely story to get to hear, for sure.
Yeah. Well, it makes me think, I wonder, have you ever had a moment where you've been in attendance for one of your songs, either performed for you or maybe, used in a piece of media for you, something where your music was presented with you in the audience that made you feel really good about it?
Oh yeah, are you kidding? Like, I have dozens of stories of that, but I mean, even recently there was a video that was on YouTube, and a guy that I know, a friend of mine, Joel Huckster, was playing guitar on it, and I won't remember the girl singer, the woman singer, but it was a version of Lay It on the Line, and she just killed it. It was so good when I saw it, and maybe it's you feel a little guilty if your own song is giving you goosebumps, but it was her performance of it that had this kind of, so that's a lovely thing. And there's a story in my book where as a surprise to me, my eldest daughter had put an arrangement together of a song called Let the Light Shine on Me from the Triumph Surveillance album, and when my other twin daughters were in the the high school junior band, she was a senior, but she conducted this arrangement that she'd written unbeknownst to me, rehearsed the junior band, and they played this song. And I mean, you can imagine a junior band. There were a lot of squawks and squeaks and out of tuneness, but it was, to be sitting there in the auditorium, and in my mind, I'm thinking, this is like Mr. Holland's Opus, except, it's a real life version of it, where it's real kids playing in real time. And, part of my ears are going, whoa, yeah, but my heart was just going, oh my God, this is, unbelievable. So that was a really nice moment. I'm trying to think of others. There's been so many. Look, here's a story I used to tell. The song Midsummer's Daydream guitar piece.
Yeah.
There was a video, I don't know if it's still around, but it was on YouTube, and it was one of the ones that had the most hits. And there's lots of versions on YouTube of people playing that piece. It was a fairly popular kind of thing. And you don't need to be an amazing guitar player, but you need to be a fairly competent one. And then you sort of have to understand about the tuning with the drop D and then the harmonics and stuff. But once you kind of get your handle on that, you can find your way into the song. So there's lots of versions of it. So a guy was in a kayak, and he was literally, and he had a little travel guitar, and he was wearing one of these like hats that has a thing down the back to keep mosquitoes from biting the back of your neck.
Yep.
So, but he's got this backpack guitar, and he's wearing this hat, and he sets his phone, and he goes, okay, I want to play. It's the middle of summer. I'm on my way to a folk festival in the Yukon someplace or something, and I'm just, I'm out in my kayak, but I thought I would share, Rik Emmett's Midsummer Daydream, and he plays a really good version of it. And then as he gets towards the end, he makes this joke about, oh, I'm starting to tip. Oh no, and he reaches out to turn off the, but that was the thing that I was like, I went, oh, isn't that great? Like that you write a piece of music, you hope that it might have an impact culturally, socially, you don't know how far that impact might go, how deep it might reach, how long it might last, all of those kinds of things. But, there's been a lot of gratifying moments when you realize, man, that music is out there, and it's like an Energizer bunny. It keeps going.
Oh, that's great. I got to see that video. That sounds also awesome and also hilarious.
Yeah, pretty good.
Okay. Well, I remember a part of your book where you say that you don't enjoy hearing recordings of yourself and your own songs, when you're playing them or singing them. So is it? It must be much more gratifying to hear someone else present that material, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't think anybody really necessarily enjoys. The other part of it is, you know, everybody has a capacity to listen to music and just enjoy it, just hear it and enjoy it for what it is. And I mean, I taught music for 20 years. Sometimes you're hearing something and it's pretty hard to find something nice to say about it, or what you're doing is you're supposed to be listening with a critical kind of ear so that you will critique it. So you're kind of listening for, how might I improve this or suggest that you might improve it. And certainly when you're listening to your own music, you're in that mode. You're going like, is this, ready for prime time? Is this good enough? You're always doing that. So I think that makes it harder when it's your own stuff. But there is a side of you can kind of switch it over and you can go, look, I'm just listening to, enjoy something. I was listening to a thing the other day because I'd made a recommendation to a friend of mine. I'd said, this is right up your alley. I'd sent him a link to something called O Magnum Mysterium. And it's a choir thing, but it can also be done by brass. And it's just, and it's, I can't remember the name of the composer. It's like Lindestrom or something like that. Linda Strauss, something like that. I think Linder, something like that. Anyhow, there's lots of versions on it on YouTube. And I sent it to my friend. And when I listen to that, I'm not critical. I just, I just switch it all off and I just go, I'm going to just listen to this and enjoy this, I find that with choral music, I can, I can get there almost instantly.
I can see that. A very soothing nature to that, it doesn't probably demand a lot of criticism. Do you feel, do you have similar feelings when it comes to, and I guess I asked this because you just put the book out, but your own writing, do you find yourself when, and this could be for songwriting too, like editing and re-examining and going over it again and again before you're totally sure, or are you more comfortable, with not going overboard with that kind of stuff?
No, I would say I am a meticulous editor, and to me, I would often say in songwriting classes, they shouldn't call it songwriting. They should call it song rewriting, because that's really what you do in order to, get it to where it's ready for prime time, where it's ready for the public to be able to enjoy it and share it and stuff. And certainly the writing of the book, it was a journey of, self-discovery on that level of, when is something at a point where I'm ready to say, this is, even just to send it to my editor and say, I'm ready now for you to chew at it, because, but Michael Holmes was my guy. He got back to me and he would say, this is really good, Rick, but wow, you've done such a good job, But I've been a writer all my life. I wrote for Guitar Player magazine for, better part of a decade and a bit, every month there had to be a column, so that kind of teaches you a discipline of writing, and I'm talking about prose, the written word. Plus I'd written a book of poetry before I got to the memoir. So, and that's writing on a whole different level, but it's not in the sense of, am I condensing and distilling to the point where this is saying exactly what I wanted to say with exactly the right words, which, that's no matter what you're writing, that's the game, right? Like, the format might be a different thing. You're not aiming for the same thing when you're writing a magazine article or column as you might be when you're writing, chapters for a memoir. Nevertheless, being a writer is being a writer, and I think I have it in my DNA, sort of. I think I'm really, it's what makes me the happiest in a creative way. But never all that happy, like it's always nice to go, I think I can fix that. Is there time to fix that? Can I get another crack at it?
Oh, that's funny. Well, the book does show that you, even though this is, you know, your first memoir, obviously, it shows that you are not new to writing. You have a long career of experience that really comes through in the pages. And I say that because I'm a big rock memoir fan. I have a huge collection of various memoirs and autobiographies from particularly musical artists. And I love them, but the issue with reading a lot of those books is that they often become a bit formulaic, and there's a lot of trappings that a lot of them fall into. And I just have to commend you on this book that I can tell, for one, there's no ghostwriter here, which is not always the case with other books. And I can really appreciate that you didn't fall into like the chronological trap, you know, or the name dropping for the sake of name dropping trap, or, you know, the so on and so forth with the stuff you find commonly in these. So, you know, when it comes to this book, was this something that you wrote all basically in a short period of time, or was this something you had been working on for like years and years before honing it down?
Yeah, years and years. But let me just say thank you for the praise. I really appreciate that. And I take a certain level of pride in the fact that I did sort of not write the standard rock star, memoir, autobiography, biography, whatever. I was reaching for something different, so it's nice to get that recognized. One of the things that exists is a fan forum on my website. And people pay for the privilege of being able to send me emails and go, Rick, do you remember when you played that concert in Milwaukee and at the World Series of Rock in the stadium in 19, whatever it was? And we did play there, by the way. And then I'll answer their question, And so I said to my web mistress, Adrienne Duncan, there's a little plug for her. Can you please assemble all of the things that I've done? Just all I want is my answers, put it all in one file and send it to me so that I can, have that as something as a resource material for the book. It was 5,000 single spaced pages.
Wow.
5,000, because it's been up there for a long time,
Yeah.
And I'm in there pretty much every day. There's something to, to answer a question or have a little conversation with somebody. Now, that took a lot of editing. I mean, a lot of editing, because, most of it's not good, but it did provide. Here's the thing. It's like you realize, well, these are the questions. If you're a real fan of Rik Emmett, these are the things you want to know. So the memoir is going to have to answer these, these fundamental kinds of questions that keep getting asked over and over and over and over, those kinds of questions. So then you kind of know, okay, well, at least a few of the chapters have got to really, those are the nails that are sticking up. You better hammer those, Yeah. So, and of course, I have all of these songs that I've written all my life. So to be able to find the idea of putting epigraphs at the beginnings of chapters, I went, well, I could probably pull a few of my own lyrics here and there, they're not all of that, because there were some other things that, are far more sort of instructive or leading in terms of my life, chapters wise. There was a quote from Hunter S. Thompson that I used, because I used to write it on the board at the beginning of my music business classes at the beginning of the year. The music business is a long, shallow plastic trench full of pimps and thieves, et cetera, et cetera. And the way he ends it is like, he goes, and there's also a negative side.
Yeah.
So, and I would say to students, like, this is important for you to understand. If you want a career in the music business, you really do have to kind of condition yourself to the point where you're going, okay, lots and lots of bad things about it, lots and lots of exploitation. And, you're going to be a piece of, meat in the meat market. You're going to be a cog in a gigantic machine. All of these, metaphors and cliches. But you got to be able to smile and laugh and go, yeah, but I get to pick up an instrument every day. I get to write songs, So, there has to be that side to it where you go, yeah, sure, but I'll accept it and I'll kind of laugh at it. I'll kind of have a cynical side to myself where I protect myself, I build a shell. So anyhow, I've really wandered off of whatever the original question was, but that's fine. What was the original question again?
Oh, just if this was written, over the course of a couple of months or several years.
Yeah. Well, so there you go. The Hunter S. Thompson thing. I had course curriculum from things that I taught for decades at the college. So and there's for those that haven't read the book yet, there's a chapter about songwriting, and there's a chapter about music business, and there's a chapter about being a dad, and and I just want to touch on one more thing, because you made me think of this when you were complimenting me, which thank you. My daughter Ashley, at one point, she said to me, "Oh, Dad, the story that you wrote on there is so sweet, and I thank you." And she says, "What made you choose that one?" And I said, "Well, darling, I could have picked. I had a half a dozen for every. And there's 4 kids, so that's 24 stories. I'm already onto my own new book there. I can't do that, but I wanted to make sure that there was something, and it can't be necessarily about you. It has to be a story sort of about what you made me feel, or it has to be about me, because the book's about me. How can I get more of me in there?" So I said to her, at that moment where you were meeting this guy, and I got all verklempt and, driving away, and left you standing there with this guy, and I realized, oh, something heavy duty is going on there. But as a writer, when I came up with the line, "Well, the universe filled me up and I started leaking," I went, "Oh, that's good writing. I'm keeping that in the book, and I'm not going to mess with that, and I'm not going to rewrite it." In that moment, I just had that little inspirational thing, and I wrote it, and I went, okay, because I've been a writer long enough in my life to recognize when you've got a moment. What does Billy Joel say? Leave that tender moment alone.
Yeah. Well, that happens with songwriting and musical recording too, right? Like little accidents in the studio that just hit the exact right note that you might not have even been planning for.
Exactly.
That's so cool to hear that kind of thing happens in books too.
Happy accidents.
Yeah.
Yeah, musicians love them. Yeah.
Right. Cool. Well, okay. Well, speaking of musicians, this obviously your first memoir, but you have a lot of experience.
Wait, you've said that twice now. Am I going to have a second?
Well, a lot of rock stars do. A lot of celebrities do. They get into the first one sells really good, and they think, the last 5 years I've done some stuff, But you're right.
I know. Joseph, let me assure you, there's only ever going to be the one. That's it, right there behind you. There's never going to. One. Yeah, okay. That's the one. There's not going to be a second. If I'm going to write, I'm going to write something else now, a collection of short stories. I had another guy interview me the other day, and he said, "I think you've got a novel in you, man. I think, you're a good writer." And I go, "Ooh, a novel. Like, that's a lot to bite into and to try and chew, like short stories, I think I could cut it because I'm a songwriter, and songs are kind of like short stories in a way, that you're carrying an idea through, 3 acts in 3 verses in a very short period of time, like I think I can do that. But man, a novel, I don't know. But I would rather sink my teeth into that than do another memoir. This has taught me something, and that is I'm not doing that again. That's enough.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because I was going to ask you if like a novel might be in your future, but I guess if maybe the metaphor is like a short story is to a song what a concept album is to a novel, so maybe it's different, a matter of scale.
That's exactly true. Like a narrative thread that has to be carried over a much longer period of time. And in my life, I only ever tried one concept album. Right. Marco's Secret Songbook was the only one in my whole discography, and it was one of the weakest selling of all of the records that I ever did, because a concept album, it's a tough sell. Like it's hard to get people to. Yeah, I'll sit down and listen to that for the next hour. Yeah, well, there's a narrator too. Hey, I don't really like your narrator. Well, that's too bad, because there's 42 clips of him interspersed. So anyhow.
Well, shoot, if you do decide to write the great Canadian novel, maybe Steve Howe will help on that project instead.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Well, were there other memoirs, maybe not necessarily from a musical artist, but were there other memoirs or books that, you read while you were putting this project together that either gave you some guidance or some inspiration for really how you wanted to tell your story?
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned that you've done a lot of reading of them, and so had I over, the course of, sort of as my touring life was winding down, I started to be reading more of them. And then, of course, once I was getting into it, I went, okay. But I really like the Springsteen one because I think he wrote that one himself, and I think he was really trying to be, honest and truthful and candid and all of the things that you hope when you pick up a book. Whereas Clapton's one, when I read it, I was really disappointed. I felt it was kind of too veiled and too, he's a gentleman. Even when he plays guitar, he doesn't make weird ugly faces and stuff. He's a contained kind of guy, and so it didn't surprise me. But as I've said in other interviews, I learned more about Clapton from Ronnie Wood's biography than I did from Clapton's. I got more insight into who he really was and what those times were really like for him. He was, and I had another guy in another interview say to me, well, but Clapton's, he had a lot of tragedy in his life, and he's had a lot of bad things happen, and breakups and divorces and children that, died, and like horror,
Yeah.
And I go, right, I get it, and so that maybe that would be a situation where a guy goes, well, I don't want to do it. Give me a ghostwriter, and I'm only going to tell these stories. And when you ask me a question I don't like, I'm going to go, yeah, I don't like that question. I'm not going there, and I get that, I get that. But, there's been some sort of off the beaten path kinds of books that I like. Loudon Wainwright III wrote one that I thought was really good and was kind of fun and had a real good sense of humor. And he's the guy that's the dad of Rufus Wainwright, and there's a girl singer too, artist, whose name is escaping me now. Oh geez. Anyhow, his was pretty good. It was kind of weird and out there in a certain way, and I like that. I'm just trying to remember, the ones that I've read recently. The Frampton one was okay. It didn't really. Not to be beating him up too much in this podcast, but we're going to mention Steve Howe again. When I read his, I went, it's kind of like he just took his day book and went, and then we were in Toledo, and then we got on the bus, and then we went to, and then then we played this really great show. Then the next day, I got up and I'm going, what? I'm sorry, Steve. This isn't really doing it for me, but I love Yes, and I was a huge fan of it when I was a younger man, but that doesn't really do anything for me, when it's just like clearly an exercise in, I'm going to put a book out,
Right. I think you can have a book where you include journal entries, but to recreate a journal, that is limited appeal,
Did you read the Donald Fagen one where he was on the bus doing the tour with, oh man, I can't remember who he was. I think he was playing with a couple of those other bands from that era. The guy that, I'm thinking Bob Welsh, and that's not the guy. Who's the guy that had the voice of, we don't want to take that day in a mountain? Who's that guy? Boz Scaggs.
Oh,
so he was doing a tour with Boz, and he was just writing things in his journal sort of on the bus. And it's great because he complains bitterly about, this generation that's downloads stuff and they're all in their phones and he's got inside kinds of phrases and jokes. And I've always really admired Donald Fagen, as an artist, I have a feeling that he's probably not a great guy to hang with because I think he does have some psychological problems, which he's kind of a little bit candid about too,
sure.
That he got to be taking medications to control all of the issues that he's got. And certainly he had drug problems, when he was younger. And anyhow,
well,
I really
that sort of reminds me of, I didn't read that one, but I did read the book that Crystal Zevon put together about Warren Zevon
Oh, yeah.
he passed. And that had a lot of Warren's journal entries. And it's kind of that same kind of thing, kind of snarky, very funny and candid. And like, that is very appealing. So, having a sense of humor is a big part.
Yeah. And I want insight into that. I want insight into who is this person? Like, listening to music is one thing. Listening to, whatever it is that they decide they're going to reveal in their songs. And sometimes it's pretty veiled. Like a guy like Donald Fagen, you don't know how much of the character, this weird character that's, I don't know. I'm trying to think of some of his characters, the guy that's got dynamite, he's going to blow up. That was one of his first hits, Oh, I got a case of dynamite. I could hold out here all night. Well, I lost my old man back in Oregon. Don't take me alive. Don't take me alive. You go, holy, what a character for a song. And that's clearly not him, but there's a little bit of him in there.
Oh, yeah.
The words coming out of that character's mouth are words that Donald Fagen wrote. So,
is the Night Fly, that's Donald Fagen, right?
Yeah, that's his album. That's his solo album. That's not the book.
No, I know, but there's a song that kind of the same kind of thing.
And that's very much him. That's a very autobiographical record. Yeah. I'm a big fan. So we could spend this whole podcast talking about him.
Oh, sure.
Anyway, let's not.
Well, I'm sure he would like that. Okay. No, instead, let's talk about your band for a second. This has been a curiosity of mine for a very long time. I know you don't sing lead vocals on it, but I'm a huge Joe Walsh fan. Rocky Mountain Way is one of my favorite songs. I like Triumph's version quite a bit. Well, can you just what was the idea of putting that song on the record, and why of all tracks, why that one?
It was a song that we used to do when we were a bar band and we first started. It was in our set as a, like a cover song, and we had, I don't know, Hendrix tunes, and we had a Deep Purple medley, and we had 2 Led Zeppelin medleys. We were pretty much a Led Zeppelin copy cover band when we were first getting bar band gigs, and we got really hot in a hurry because bar owners were going, Led Zeppelin, well, and it's good. Oh, they couldn't wait to give us more money to come back, So, but the Joe Walsh thing was one of the things that Gil sang. And so then we'd done our first album, and then the record company was going, okay, let's get a second one going here. And you go, well, geez, we've been out gigging and touring. We don't have a lot of material. And then we were in this pre-production and trying to write songs, and we didn't have enough. And they're like, well, and Mike Levine was the producer of our albums at the time, their bass player, and he said, why don't we take a shot at Rocky Mountain Way? Like, we could maybe get that to cross over to AM radio, because it's, if we did it so that it didn't have all, the breakdown talk box thing in it, if it really just had the bang, 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 gang, gang, and it had the chord riff, and we leaned on that, like maybe that would work, and it did. It crossed us over. We were able to jump from sort of being we were a concert act by then, but just barely. But now we were getting enough airplay that we could go across Canada and we could play, the smaller arenas and put on our big, production with our lasers and our propane torch and our, anyhow. So that was a big thing, and it worked great for us, I like Joe too. I think he's a fantastic, and again, that sense of humor thing, right?
Yes. Yes, probably one of the funniest songwriters. Did you ever lay down a vocal track on that, or was that always going to be Gil?
Always going to be Gil.
Yeah.
And the premise of the band was always sort of 50-50. There's going to be a Rik song, Gil song, Rik song, Gil song, and concert shows were going to kind of do pretty much that, and albums were pretty much going to kind of do that. The catch came, the Just a Game album that had Hold On and Lay It on the Line, that had become pretty, they'd kind of broken us at American radio. And so now the record company and American radio were both kind of going, we want the blonde guy to sing the song. So we, to which the drummer was not that happy. This was not the band that he, decided he wanted to be in and start and be the leader of. And general manager and stuff. So, that led to some issues inside the band, and that over time eventually made it so like, okay, I gotta go. See you. I gotta get out of there.
What's funny is I think some of those same kind of issues affected Joe when he was in his band, with the Eagles.
I think it happens to every band in the end,
Sure.
At some point. Like, as I've said in many interviews, and I say in the book, the Beatles were the most successful band in the history of the planet, and they broke up after 10 years. They were having a hard time getting along with each other. They all had their own spouses and things now, and some of them had their own kids, and they were going, geez, I think I'd really like to make a solo album where I don't have to bounce my ideas off of you.
Right.
So,
Oh boy. So moving ahead a little bit, a previous guest on this show was a guy named Ken Seisler, and he directed the first 5 hours of the debut broadcast of MTV. MTV is a topic I love talking about on the show. And I find it interesting that you guys put out, it was Allied Powers like a month before MTV debuted. And that's sort of, you guys just about at the peak. And then this whole new revolutionary thing comes across and has a big impact on the music industry with MTV. When that was going on in the very early days, what was your initial reaction to MTV and the ideas behind it? Were you worried about it? Did you feel the band was up for doing videos, or how did that impact you guys?
Okay, so really good question and a great topic, because it was instrumental for us on a couple of levels, but not quite what you've described. So here's the story that I love to tell. We were signed with RCA Records, and they're in New York, and MTV was starting in New York. Now, RCA, this is prior to this, we had an album, Just a Game, where RCA was in a fight, and this gives people insight into the fact that, you think music is a big business, you think music matters, it's a smaller cog in a much larger kind of, world paradigm. And in RCA's case, they're going to make a lot more money if they can only win the video cassette machine war with Sony. Sony's got Betamax and RCA's got VHS. And it's RCA's VHS format. So if they win the war, then everybody's going to have to license that VHS format off of them, because it's proprietary. They own it. So they have a big stake in this, and they're thinking, how can we win? The American public is really where we want to fight this fight. So they go, I know, we'll put a VHS machine in every record store across the country, and we'll put one of our acts, on a tape loop in there. And it'll play, and everybody will be seeing this thing going, the marvel of this tape machine that's playing these things, meanwhile with the RCA logo on it, brought to you by RCA, So they probably have a meeting at their boardroom table and go, well, we'll use Elvis. And they go, no, don't use Elvis. Like, this has got to be hip. We can't keep dating ourselves, Right. So they go, well, and so Mike Levine, he sort of catches wind of this and goes, well, give us money and we'll shoot some videos. We'll go to a soundstage and we'll do a performance thing and we'll shoot some. So we had 4 songs, videos, and they were in the can and they were used for that. And it helped us. RCA really did kind of, go to the wall for us in terms of marketing and promoting that record. And they did a great job. So now MTV starts, and MTV in its early stages, there's not enough videos. Nobody's made enough videos. They're playing Michael Nesmith videos 3 times a day, because they haven't got enough stuff, A
lot of Rod Stewart.
Yeah. So they're scrambling around and they're going, what do we got? And so RCA is there going, well, we have this band Triumph. And they go, okay, well, let's see it. So there was a thing that happened when we shot the song Lay It on the Line, where there was a camera that was shooting a close-up of me, kind of, like this as I'm singing. But in the background, a flash pot went off. And so the bulb of the camera just went, wow, like whited out, and then came back, and there's Rik singing his song. So it was a money shot. Yeah. Before there were money shots in rock videos, it was an unbelievable and MTV clipped it and used it in their bumper that was like, "You're watching MTV." And, here's a little clip from this guy doing something. And here's a little clip of Rik Emmett with his shoulder strap off of his jumpsuit, singing, and boom, he blows up and he comes back. So we were darlings of MTV. And as you say, the Allied Forces album came down the pipe, but then we made videos for that and we saw them and we were horrified that this guy had done this incredibly cheesy. Oh yeah, because he'd done a thing, we called it Birthday Cakes in Space, where it was a stage that was like a flying V guitar, but it was all shot with video, take the color out and make the stars go shooting past, and all this stuff, and get a machine to blow Rick's hair. And it looked bad, and we went, "Oh, we got to bury those things," and we did the best we could. Have you seen the Triumph documentary?
Banger
I haven't.
Film? No,
Okay, so Banger Films did a documentary, and one of the things they do is they have a laptop, and they put it in front of a guy like, say, Sebastian Bach, and they go, "Hey," and because he's a Triumph fan, right? And they go, "Hey, Sebastian, you ever seen this?" And he's sitting there going, "I've never seen this. What is this? Oh my God, there's a chick, she's lying in a bed. There's a spaceship flying into her bedroom, They got the Trailer Park Boys,
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, talking about what they're watching the video and going, "Oh man, what is this shit?" So anyhow, it's pretty funny, And you have to laugh at yourself. Okay, so now, sorry, I'm going on here, but to answer your question, as MTV evolved and grew, I really hated it. And I think the other guys in the band did too. We just hated the idea of an image was going to be assigned to a song, and it was going to be sort of imprinted in someone's head. The whole thing of somebody's personal imagination being able to pick their own story for whatever song they're listening to. MTV changed the nature of that in a big way. Plus, it was taking playlists that existed in the real world and narrowing them way down, And then it was making it so that it was turning the world into Duran Duran stuff, guys that are wearing makeup and chasing models through the jungle, and
Right.
You're going, okay, what's this? What does this got to do with music? Now, having said that, they did Prince concerts in the early days. They did a Triumph concert. And certainly there were artists like Peter Gabriel that did things in those early days that were interesting, and they were clever, and they were art. They were good,
Yeah. Talking Heads, another one.
Yeah, sure. I think the Dire Straits' Money for Nothing one was one of the first times they sort of had a computer doing animation, and it was. But the song, again, had the sense of humor, like, guys that are moving refrigerators for a living who are now, critiquing videos they're watching on the TVs in the show. And I went, okay, that's pretty good, But by and large, after a while I was going, we'll just do concert videos, come on, let's be like Springsteen, and let's really just, be honest here.
Well, there's one I wanted to ask you about, and I wonder if it was kind of made as a result of some of this frustration and disillusionment with MTV. The Never Say Never video from the later half of the 80s, with there's that alien boss figure and the girls running all around the set. I mean, I hope this isn't too embarrassing of a memory, but it's strikingly visual. It's a fun watch, but how did that video come to fruition if you were wanting to do more performance videos?
I had almost nothing to do with the formulation of stuff at that point, other than Gil was kind of the executive producer of these things, and he would have meetings with Don Allen, and Don Allen was our guy that did it. And Don, I think, was able to get the set from some science fiction kind of TV show that was being shot. So it had all of these different kinds of, apocalyptic kinds of things. And it was like, okay, and we're going to dress the band this way, and we'll make your hair huge for MTV, and, all of these kinds of things. I think probably I said, well, if you're going to do that, the album cover had this helmet guy
Right.
which that had grown out of the Never Surrender cover, where there had been a guy in a sort of a centurion helmet with a spike down between his eyes, but he had these eyes inside this, helmet. And then it was like, hey, let's update the helmet guy. We'll have him come back on the cover of the Surveillance album. And so then this idea of surveillance, it'll be like someone's always watching you. And so the video sort of became about the helmet guy was watching the chicks running around and the band was playing and it was like, it made no sense to me, and they were big on this moment where they were going to run a sled down a lighted, hallway kind of, but it was going to make it look like it was some sort of, roller coaster thingy, Space Mountain, but happening at light speed or something, And then when it happened, it was all of about, I don't know, 4 seconds in the video or 6 seconds or something. And you kind of go, man, all of that free cell that you gave us, and that's what it is. That's it. The camera's kind of jiggling and the thing's going down. You go, that's it. You put a guy in a shopping cart and you pushed him down this column of light. Okay, whatever.
Kind
and
of
that
a
was
far
the thing
cry
about
from
videos.
the happy accident of your early video with the flash bulb behind you. That's the difference between a nice thing that happens and over construction, I guess.
And the other thing is that, I had now been in the music business for, and I'm talking about a record contract that I signed that said I was a recording artist,
Right.
So now that I've been in for about, let me think about it, do the math, 12 years, 11, 12. And I'm kind of thinking, look, I got into this because I like music and I'm a musician, and this is the story of my life. And so these stories where we've got, science fiction and fashion models and, we got to spend some time in hair and makeup. And I don't think any of us, the three guys in Triumph, were keen on it on any level, except for the fact okay, it's our song and we have to market and promote our songs, our records. We're under contract to do this. So we have to play this game. But none of us enjoyed it, It's and I think there are some guys that do, your David Bowie, Peter Gabriel kinds of guys. I think they savor the challenge, they go, oh, this will be great, but we weren't really, from a visual point of view, it was more like, hey, we want to stand in a laser cone and then blow off some flash pots, and then have 147 lights turn green all at once, so.
Yeah, a little overproduction, but
but it's old school, right? That was the thing that existed visually before there was MTV.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's true. Well, let's talk about another big event in the 80s. And I know this is something you've talked about at length before, but it's such a topic that's so interesting to me because it was really a big moment in classic rock history. And you could probably guess I'm going to ask you about the US Festival, 1983. You were on Heavy Metal Day, along with Quiet Riot, Motley Crue, Ozzy, Judas Priest, Scorpions, and the mighty Van Halen. Can you share some of your memories of that day? And what would you say the vibe was when you're on a lineup like that and such a big audience? Is there a competitive kind of vibe, or is it a party atmosphere, or what do you remember?
Well, I'm going to give you context. First of all, that summer we played a lot of outdoor stadium shows where we were up the bill. We were actually kind of making a lot of money. And the night before we played the US Festival, we played, and I think it was Orlando, on a ZZ Top outdoor show. And we did the Rose Bowl up from Journey. Journey played a bunch of outdoor shows up in the stadiums up the West Coast. And I played the Texas World Music Festival with Sammy Hagar and Ted Nugent, and Styx was the headliner, and we did Dallas and Houston back to back.
Was that when they were doing the Mr. Roboto Kilroy was here thing? Oh boy.
Exactly. And in truth, so on that day, you'd had Ted, Triumph, Sammy, And then Tommy Shaw of Styx said to Dennis, we can't go out there and do this rubato thing. Like, please don't. Let's play the heavy stuff. Let's do, Blue Collar Man. And Dennis was going, no, we're doing the Broadway thing.
Oh,
and
boy.
So the audience was just walking out of the stadiums in droves once Styx went on. And I think it made Tommy literally sort of throw his guitar down on the stage and quit the band. And if I think the second night. Anyways, so that's the context. We were already doing these things. So, and the night before we fly in, we catch a nap. You get up, you have something to eat, you get in an helicopter and you fly over to the US Festival. And you're flying over all these people and going, what the hell is this? I had no idea it was going to be like this. You did know there were going to be all these bands during the day, but we were playing in the daylight. Now, if you play outdoor shows, if you're playing in the afternoon in the daylight, like just get out there, hammer, like we did, none of our lights, none of our effects, nothing. You just play your songs and get the hell out, And your intro to this, you said the mighty Van Halen. You could have said that about any of those bands at that time. The mighty Judas Priest, the mighty Motley Crue. Like they were all big, and they were all big in their own way. Some of them were bigger on the West Coast than other guys,
Well, some were just starting out. That's what's interesting. Motley Crue only had like a 1 or 2 records at that point.
Yeah,
but anyway,
I know.
I get your point. Yep.
Still, for a day like that, those were the right. Triumph. What was Triumph doing here? They were the outlier, and the outlier was that Steve Wozniak liked us, and it was his money. Like he's the one that was throwing this festival thing. There was a country day, there was a new age day or new wave day or whatever, and but Steve liked hard rock music too, or somebody talked him into it, who knows, but he liked Triumph songs. He liked that sort of positive, hey, hold on to your dreams, the magic power of the music. Like he totally dug it, so we were kind of his band. So we kind of had, it wasn't cockiness, but there was a like, I don't know if you've seen the thing, but he literally introduced us. Gil walks him out to the front of the stage, and Wozniak picks up a mic and goes, "Oh, we love him. Please welcome Triumph." He's not very good at being an MC, but it was the first time he'd ever done it, and it's kind of, that was pretty cool. The guys whose money was paying for all of this was going to be our MC and introduce us. So we were kind of like, yeah. And then finally, I'll say this, I happened to have a good day. Some days, some shows not so good, but that day I was kind of on. I liked the sound of the rented Marshall I had. My guitar sounded really good in the monitors and stuff. I was going, okay, I'm ready to, hammer it. And I sang pretty good that day. And of course, there were cameras. And so the legacy of the US Festival was kind of Triumph's to claim, because we said to Wozniak and everybody, hey, can we have the footage and make our own like DVD out of it? Oh yeah, sure. You go ahead. And all the other acts were kind of going, no, we don't want that stuff. We're trying to bury that.
Yeah. That's kind of interesting, is because like a lot of bands did not bring their A game to that event. I mean, I know that like I love Van Halen, but Diamond Dave was obliterated during his set. So
Indeed.
Here's a question. I know that day was like, that whole weekend was like insanely hot. Do you remember it being brutally hot, and how did you just deal with the heat?
It wasn't just hot. It was also that so many people, the vegetation, such as it was, the scrub of the desert had been, now it was just nothing but dust. Oof. And so if the wind blew, if the people were moving anywhere, up came the particulate, and it was in the air. Never mind that. How much grass and hash was being smoked. There was that particulate in the air. And so you ran up and down the stage a couple of times, and you felt like, oh, like like I'm in a Hopi smoke teepee here. Like, this is crazy. It was really hard to catch your breath. Yeah. And it was hard. And I think that it was also the Santa Ana winds had kind of come along and been blowing all of this stuff into the venue itself was sort of surrounded by hills and mountains. So it was all getting trapped in this little bowl of a place where it wasn't so little. It was holding anywhere from 250 to 400,000 people, depending on how much dope you'd smoked to do your eyeball.
Right, like we see in doubles.
Yeah, exactly. But Yeah, and of course it's the heavy metal day, so there's going to be some hype going on from many camps, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's
Anyways,
bring it back to the book for a second, because
yeah,
you wrote about the Yus Festival. You include it in a list of some of your all-time favorite gigs in the book, and this is one of the reasons why I really enjoyed this book. Is that I think you were talking about it earlier. You preemptively answered, I think, a lot of questions. You know, typical questions I like to ask are like, well, what are your favorite gig memories? And you line them up in a really nice way. And then there's another part in the book where you share some of your road horror stories, some of which are absolutely hysterical. So before we get out of here, of your horror stories, we talked about a great event. Let's talk about maybe one that didn't go so well. What one makes you look back and just kind of laugh the most?
okay. Well, I don't want to tell one that's in the book.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because there's one in the book about, you know, a guitar clinic that I did in a grocery store. You know?
Yes.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
you
we'll
know,
save that one for the book.
probably the worst gig of my life kind of story. And here's the thing too, you know, like I could probably write a book just about my horror stories, you know, because there's so many. This is like stories about my kids, right? And eventually you're picking highlights, right? So there's one that didn't make the book, but I'm going to tell you the story because, and I've told this story many times, radio interviews and stuff, but and the venue, I keep changing it, and I can't remember where it was. It was either Philly or Baltimore or Towson State. It was someplace on the East Coast, you know,
Okay.
somewhere in Washington, somewhere in that, you know, nexus. And I had, I had this kind of new blue t-shirt, cut off sleeves, but it was kind of long. And I had these, you know, this was the Allied Forces era. I had these white pants that I'd had a tailor stitch the pockets closed, and they were skin tight. You had to lie down to get them on, you know?
Oh.
Yeah, they were tight. And I had the white flying V, right? So, the show would start, and boom, 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 we blow off a bunch of flash pots, and we come roaring down these, you know, right out to the front of the stage. And it was like, take my picture, I'm a rock star, you know, spread legs of me. And so the audience would immediately be sort of up on their chairs, you know, screaming and yelling, and it was designed to make that happen, right? The energy was just off the top, was crazy. But there was a gaggle of girls that had come right to the barricade at the front, in front of me, and they were screaming. They had an extra kind of intensity about the way they were screaming at me, right? And I'm thinking, yeah, okay, you know, and, you know, running around the stage, but coming back to these girls, and every time I came back, they were just leaning over and screaming at me, right? And so I'm thinking, I am awesome, you know, I am a rock star. This is a great, you know. And so, but the song ends, and then the next song is going to start, but it starts right away with a kick drum going boom, 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 setting up the tempo for the next, like no dead air at the beginning of a Triumph show for at least 4 or 5 songs, because you're just going to start the thing down the hill, you know, and it's going to pick up momentum. And so, but it's kind of, there's enough of a space that I can hear them yelling now as I'm standing at the front of the stage and, you know, getting everybody to put their fists in the air, right? And I can hear them, and one of them, finally, I'm leaning over and going, what are you saying? And she's going, your fly is down. And I look down, and oh, buddy, this is going to get better. The zipper has exploded. The pants were so tight that the zipper has just exploded. But the blue T-shirt that it was kind of long, and I tucked it in. It's sticking out of the broken fly like an origami penis. Like, it's just, so I've been running around with this, and I got a white guitar, I got white pants, I got a blue flag. And, you know, like, what can you do, right? It's the most embarrassing thing that could possibly happen. And, you know, 17,000 people have witnessed this, you know. So, you know, I got running back, like, I can't, this is the beginning of the show, I can't go and change my pants.
Right.
So the roadies had to get out duct tape, this is a very Canadian thing, and create a gray codpiece for me, you know, on the front of my pants until we get to the drum solo in the middle of the show. So that was one of life's most embarrassing moments. And the thing that I like to, and I would tell this story, by the way, when I would do motivational speaking things sometimes in high schools, because I would say to kids, I know sometimes your worst enemy is yourself. You know, you're afraid. You're afraid of, how you look and what you've said, and But I want you to remember this story and remember that I did this thing. It was the most embarrassing thing I could ever do, and I survived.
Yeah.
The next day the sun came up and I had to go play another gig, and I had to go get a new pair of pants. But essentially, that was it. It's not going to kill you, So that was that's the story.
Well, I hope you sent those pants to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, where they should be displayed from now on.
No, I think they went into the garbage there. Listen, I got to cut this short, Joseph. We've been going a long time here.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, you're right. Let's call it here. Just one last easy one. Halloween is here. This is going to go up on Halloween. What's one of your favorite songs to hear around the Halloween season? It could be one of yours. It could be anything.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to tell you a little story. I'm full of stories. You got me on story mode. There's a friend of mine named Blair Packham, and Blair had a band in Canada called the Jitters, and he and I we worked on a song studio kind of songwriting workshop together, and I love Blair deeply. And he once wrote a song that was called "One Hit Wonder," and it was because he had been in Florida one time and he had seen Bobby Boris Pickett playing in a mall, like in a mall parking lot, and he really only ever had this song, you do the monster mash, you do the mash. It was a graveyard smash, But Blair's song was kind of about somebody saying like, oh, what a lousy thing that this guy, what a sad situation. And Blair's song was kind of going, yeah, well, at least he had one.
Yeah,
he's a one-hit wonder, but at least, and that was kind of the hook of his song, was a one-hit wonder, but he had one, So I don't know if you can track that song down or not to play it, but if you can't, just play the Bobby Boris, little of the Bobby Boris, because it's good, the Monster Mash it's classic. But if you can track down Blair's tune, I think that would be a really cool thing to play.
Absolutely, I will do that, and I'll post it on our social media too. Rik, this has been so much fun talking to you. I love your stories. A+ book. Congrats on it.
Thank you.
I'd love to talk to you again anytime. But best of luck to you with the book. And thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this.
You're welcome. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
All right. Hey, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember the big 4 things you can do to support this show that don't cost a dime. Number 1, listen to the show. If you're hearing this now, that means you did this part already. Thank you. There is an infinite amount of content out there, so you choosing to spend some time listening to this show means a great deal to me. Number 2, if you like what we did here, please recommend this show to family, friends, or anyone you know who's looking for a podcast, particularly about music. Share our links in Facebook groups, subreddits, and recommendation threads. Whatever you can do is highly appreciated on my end. Number 3, find us on social media. Follow us on Twitter @PlayThatPodcast. Like us on Facebook facebook.com/playthatpodcast. And subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/C/playthatrock'n'roll. Lots of great material, like photos and vlogs, on all 3 platforms, as Play That Rock and Roll is very much meant to be a content hub as well as a podcast. And finally, the big ask. Number 4, please give us a 5-star rating and a positive review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. I know this part is a hassle, but it really does help the show a great deal. Not just because it affects the algorithm, but also because it gives me something I can point to when pitching this show to potential guests. The more social media followers and positive ratings the show has, the the better chance I have for booking high-profile guests for interviews. So if you take a moment to give us even just a 5-star rating, you are actively giving us a tool to do bigger and better things here. But whatever the case, I appreciate any and all efforts you take to support us here at Play That Rock and Roll. Be sure to join us next time for more great stories and music from the world of classic rock.